All right. Today I want to talk about morality and ethics. This is a big question and this is a sensitive question. So I'm trying to think how morality and ethics. This might be one of the longest ranging debate topics ever. A long time ago, not that long ago, I made a video about acceptance, accepting yourself, accepting these things. And I think there's something to be said about accepting the degenerate aspects of yourself. I don't know if I necessarily believe in a strong concept of good and evil in a very black and white sense, as this is objectively good and this is objectively bad. In some cases, there's cases like child abuse and all these things. I think that's objectively bad. I think most people can agree on that. But outside of things like that, I think it's blurry. It's blurry. I think that people, I don't think people are inherently good or evil. I think people are inherently natural. And what I mean by this is that if you take animals, because humans are animals, we have animal instincts, etc. If you take animals from different species and you put them in an environment where their basic needs are met, they have food, they have shelter, there's not necessarily this competition for resources in a controlled environment. You'll see oftentimes that these animals end up getting along, even though they may come from different species, right? And they can play and pretend as much as they want. But the reality is, as soon as that environment collapses and a competition for resources ensues, all that shit fades away. All that shit fades away. And we revert back. They revert back to their instinctual survival nature. And I really strongly believe that people are the exact same. Like if you just watch, right? I just want to give you an example. What happened with toilet paper during the thing. We're gonna call it the thing in 2020, the thing. Or any big kind of, Black Friday, all these things. How quickly do we collapse back down into people fighting over a TV, people fighting over toilet paper, people fighting over this and that and these things and this item, that item. That's not even an essential survival need. That's not even an essential survival good. And people are already reverting back down to it. So imagine what happens when it comes down to actual survival resources. And the environment is no longer conducive to upholding a charade of social morality. Because what's good by one cultural standard is completely different than what's good from it by another cultural standard. And both of those cultural standards of and definitions of good are completely different than the definition of good of another cultural standard. And I think accepting that as true is very liberating. I think there's something attractive. I'm going to give you two scenarios. And I want you to think about who you'd rather be in these two scenarios. The quote unquote good guy who you find out is actually bad, like an actual bad person who does bad things on the side. Or a quote unquote bad guy who actually has good redeeming traits and qualities about himself. What's more interesting? What's more alluring to you? I think B arguably is the second. It's the latter. It's so disappointing when you see a guy who's like, oh, that guy's tip of the top, and then you find out some weird, shady shit about him. You're like, what the? Just totally fucks up your perception of that guy. But when you're looking at a guy who was never really like, you're like, and then you're like, oh, he did that? Better than I thought. You know what I mean? It's like interesting. It's like, okay, I wouldn't have expected that, but it makes me like him a little bit more. And it's funny because I watch these guys. I watch it like I watch these guys like Ye and Tate and everything like that. And these guys are fucking DJs. They can hide behind the cover of whatever they want to, but deep down, these guys are severe degenerates. And it's frustrating. It's a little bit frustrating. Not frustrating, but it's just it's a funny observation because they try so hard to run away from it. They try so hard to say, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. Yay, all these guys, Ye puts up this God front, right? To try to convince himself. It's not for the public, it's for him, it's for himself. Because I think deep down he doesn't want to accept that he's actually just a big fucking DJ. I think now maybe it's a little bit more, but all those times where we see him go back to that, it's because he's been trying to convince himself of something that he's not. And it almost feels like a cop out. Not, I don't know if necessarily the cop out is the correct word here. But there's something to it. There's something to it. About not allowing himself to be what he truly is. About not letting yourself be what you truly are. And a large part of that comes from shame. Shame of the shadow, which is why I think shadow work is so important. And the old saying goes that, you can only meet people as deeply as they have met themselves. But what we forget is that the deeper you go, the darker it gets. Right? If you go out into the ocean, the deeper you go, the less the light reaches those layers of the ocean. And I think it's a little bit scary. I think it's scary for people. It's scary for people to accept that. I think it truly is. I don't think, for me personally, I would never want to claim that good guy badge. I'm not saying I'm not a good guy. I'm just saying I wouldn't want to overtly claim that badge. Because the fall from that is shocking to the people around you. You know what I mean? It's like, what? That guy, he was always a good guy, though. He was always like an upstanding guy. You know what I mean? And that's why when you look at it, like when these, I'm just giving, Ye and Tay as an example, when they come out and do some amoral shit, people are like, what, bro? What about God and all these things? Like, but all that shit was a cover up for them. I'm not saying that you can't be aspirational towards aspirational goodness. I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive to do what's right and what's correct and what's just and what's moral. I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive to be those things and to do those things. I'm saying that it's unjust to yourself to think and discard the fact that you are an animal, a natural being, and that when push comes to shove, you will push and you will shove. And I see this largely in the left, right? Like the woke, all these things. These people sit on a very, very high horse of themselves, on a very high morality. I would never do that. I would never do that. That's not me. CO2, oh, I care about everyone. I care about this. And I'm saying this because I was this person. I'm saying this because I was this person. But underneath all of that, is a very subtly hidden motive, selfish motive, which is fine if you acknowledge it. The problem is that they don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to acknowledge that they're selfish and their desires are self-interested because it hurts the idea of what they think of they have of themselves. When I was in that frame of thinking, and I wanted to do these big projects, I was like, oh, I care about the carbon emissions, I care about this, I care about, all these things, the vegans, the animals, and everything. When I started to do work, I realized I didn't actually care about those things. What I cared about was being perceived as caring of those things because I thought that that made me a good person, but it was actually self-interested. And that actually fucked me up for a while. I was like, oh, fuck, this doesn't feel good. This does not feel good. When I had these realizations, because it's like a huge shatter to your ego. It's a huge shatter to your beliefs that maybe I'm not as good of a person I thought that I was. And I'm not saying I'm not a good person. I'm just saying that it's nuanced. It's nuanced because the environment was conducive was conducive for me to put that on. I don't necessarily believe that there's anything as an act or a deed that is not self-interested. I think that all deeds are self-interested. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're bad, because my self-interest can align with your self-interest. Our self-interest can align with a larger collective group of self-interests. And then this comes into a topic and play of ego and everything like that. But all acts are self-interested. Whether they boost your status, they might make you feel better, right? Like if you listen to people talk, right? If you listen to people talk, if you listen to people say, oh, why do they do good things? Why do they do good things? Because it makes me feel good. Well, that's self-interest. Oh, I do this, I do these things, I do that and that because it makes me feel good. Brother, that's self-interested. I do this and this and this and this because I don't want to go to hell. Brother, that is self-interested. I do this and this and this and this because I want to receive good karma. That is self-interest. I'm doing this and this and this subconsciously because I'll get praise of how good of a boy I am. And I want to be seen with a good light. That is self-interest. And I've had this conversation before about action versus intent. Because at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, if a homeless man is fed, if you help this person, does it matter if your intent is self-interested? Does it really matter? No, I don't think it does. As long as you don't feel shame around saying that. The problem is people have shame and guilt around saying and acknowledging and accepting that what they're doing is selfish and self-interested, only because there's a collective belief that the term selfishness and self-interestedness is negative. We have a negative association with that word. Oh, he's selfish. But I don't view selfish. I don't view selfish as, because you have to break down the word self. It depends on how you view the word self. And I've spoken about the extension of the self. Right? So like if I view this body as an extension of myself, if I view my house as an extension of the self, of the energetic self. I'm not talking about the physical self. I'm talking about the energetic self that encompasses my soul, my being, my essence, which can be expanded. If I talk about the people around me as being a part of that collective self, wouldn't my self-interest also benefit those people? Wouldn't my selfishness benefit those people? You can't give from an empty cup. Your cup's got to be overflowing first. Does that make sense? The cup that you have to give from has to be overflowing. But when I go back to the example of like the woke, right? Like the woke left and everything like that. Not necessarily even the woke left, just in general. I think people hide behind this. I think people hide behind certain things and ideologies to mask what they truly are. And I don't know if that works because it's not authentic. It's not true. It's not real. It's a pretend. It's a character. It's a false belief system. Being authentic and being real down to the core requires that you accept all of it. And I think that in environments can be conducive to aspirationally good behavior. Like when we say, oh, this person doesn't bring out the best of me, this person doesn't bring out, you know, or this person brings out the worst in me. That's very true. And so I think it's very, very important to surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you, who do bring out the best of you. Because it's there too. Like I said, it's there too. It's the dual, the good and the bad. You're not all bad, you're not all good, you are combination. But I think a lot of people try to neglect that other aspect of the duality. So. Yeah,